Hello YouTube, how's everyone doing? It's Professional here. Welcome back to my playthrough of Call of Duty World at War. Let's continue where we left off here. Let's do Eviction. Crush the German resistance as you make your way into the heart of Berlin. Okay, hardened.
Our grip tightens around the black heart of Berlin. The Fuhrer demands all to shed their last drop of blood in its defense. The old, the young, the weak.
This is true. This is all that's left of the mighty German army.
If they stand for Germany, they die for Germany. Building by building, room by room, one rat at a time.
Dmitri, are you ready?
Töten Sie mich nicht!
He wants mercy. You do not deserve mercy.
What mercy did you show to our people?
Die.
Wait! He may help.
Help us. He can die for us. Mudak!
That was a war crime right there.
This
And
is not war. This is murder. This is how you end a war, Chernobyl.
this is exactly what I mean when I say that that World at War is honestly like a horror game, and this shows the brutality of the Eastern Front.
This is madness. Our rockets are tearing the city apart. Get inside.
It does show that there was that other Soviet soldier tried to stop him, saying he can help us, but then the other one just shot him in the face. And the you look at this. This is how destroyed Berlin is. This is what happens when you resort to total war, is stuff like this. The war will come to your homeland and it will destroy everything. And Hitler refused to negotiate, refused to surrender. He was willing to sacrifice every last man, woman, and child. There was the Nero Decree, which he issued in the last few weeks of World War II in Europe. And what the Nero Decree was, it was based on the Roman Emperor Nero, who actually burnt Rome to the ground. And Albert Speer, the head architect of Nazi Germany, was given that order. What the Nero order basically was, it was an order that Speer was to destroy all infrastructure before the Allies could capture it. And when we're talking infrastructure, we're not just talking factories, for example. We're talking factories, burning farms, destroying railroad tracks, blowing up schools even. This is stuff that the German people are going to need after the war. They're going to need this stuff to rebuild their country after the war. And Speer basically told Hitler don't do this. There's actually a scene of this in Downfall.
Wohin immer der Feind vordringt, es soll nur noch eine Wüste vorfinden.
Das ist das Todesurteil für das deutsche Volk. Kein Strom, kein Gas, kein sauberes Wasser, keine Kohle, kein Verkehr. Alle Bahnanlagen, Kanäle, Docks, Schleusen, Schiffe, Lokomotiven, all das zu zerstören, würde unser Land zurückschleudern ins Mittelalter. Mit diesem Befehl rauben Sie dem Volk jegliche Überlebenschance.
Wenn der Krieg verloren geht, ist es vollkommen wurscht, wenn auch das Volk verloren geht. Es ist nicht notwendig, auf die Grundlagen, die das deutsche Volk zu seinem primitivsten Weiterleben braucht, Rücksicht zu nehmen. Im Gegenteil, es ist besser, diese Dinge selbst zu zerstören. Denn das Volk hat sich als das Schwächere erwiesen und es ist nur ein Naturgesetz, dass es daneben ausgerottet wird.
Es ist Ihr Volk. Sie sind der Führer.
Was nach diesem Kampf übrig bleibt, sind ohnehin nur die Minderwertigen, denn die Guten sind gefallen.
So Speer basically told Hitler, don't do this. Is the German people are going to need this after the war. Is you're just going to, prolong the suffering. But Hitler basically said is that the true Germans have already died. And he said that the only Germans that are left alive are weak and they deserve to be destroyed. And I will say this, is that a lot of people compare Kaiser Wilhelm the second of the last, monarch of Germany to Hitler, which is not even comparable. Kaiser Wilhelm is not even 10% as bad as Hitler was. Hitler was 100 times worse than Kaiser Wilhelm was. And about Wilhelm was not a good man. He was a bad guy, but he wasn't evil. And that's the difference. Hitler was evil. And the thing about Wilhelm, what I'll say, is that Wilhelm abdicated. He stepped down from power. Because in the last few in the last few weeks of World War I, what happened was the German generals had figured that it's only a matter of time before the Allies would invade, Germany, because Germany's spring offensive had failed in 1918, and the Allies were then on the offensive. And they were going to push into Germany, and World War I was going to end soon, and Germany was going to get destroyed. And what they did was they forced Wilhelm to abdicate. Now, Wilhelm had a lot of supporters, so if Wilhelm wanted to, he could have done a coup. And there would have been people who would have followed him. There would have been generals who would have followed him. And it would have caused a civil war in Germany. But the thing is, though, is that Wilhelm did not want to let that happen. He didn't want Germany to tear itself apart. So for the good of Germany, he agreed to abdicate, and he went to exile in the Netherlands. He made that sacrifice for his country, so that his country could have peace after World War I. And Hitler had blamed Wilhelm, said, oh, he's a coward, he's a, he gave up, he sold Germany out, blah, 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 this. Wilhelm didn't want war coming to Germany. Did Germany get a favorable peace after World War I? No. But the alternative was worse. The alternative was Germany would have been completely reduced to rubble. And look, this is exactly what happens now in World War II, is Hitler did not want to step down. He did not want to surrender. He did not want to do that. And he wanted his regime to survive until the very last day, and he was going to sacrifice every single last man, woman, and child. And Wilhelm actually died in 1940, and Hitler really hated him. The reason that Hitler never had Wilhelm killed, even when Germany occupied the Netherlands, is because there were still a lot of people that supported the monarch in Germany, and Hitler was trying to say, oh, I'm Wilhelm's successor. If Hitler had killed Wilhelm, what that would have done is that would have caused a lot of civil unrest in Germany. A lot of people would have been really angry about that. So when Wilhelm died, Hitler tried to basically use that as propaganda, saying that I'm Wilhelm's successor, but Wilhelm actually wrote specifically in his will that he does not want to be buried in Germany until the monarchy is restored. And as for Wilhelm, what did Wilhelm think of Hitler? Wilhelm hated Hitler. He hated him. Wilhelm even said about Kristallnacht, when the Nazis actually went, door to door, just destroying Jewish businesses, beating Jewish people up in the streets, killing Jewish people. When that actually happened, Wilhelm actually said, for the first time in my life, I am ashamed to be German. He said that. And I know what some people are going to say. Some people are going to say in the comments, but Professional, wasn't Kaiser Wilhelm an anti-Semite? Didn't he hate Jews? Yes, he was an anti-Semite. He was a racist. But there's a difference between being an anti-Semite and being a genocidal maniac. Was Wilhelm racist against Jewish people? Yes. But Wilhelm would not have supported something like the Holocaust. And that's what horrified him about that. So that's what I would say about Wilhelm. Was he a good man? No. But he wasn't evil like Hitler. And he understood when the war was gonna close in on Germany and Germany was gonna get destroyed. He understood that, and he agreed to step down for power for the better of his country, so his country didn't prolong its suffering. But Hitler, on the other hand, he wanted to fight to the very last man, and look at what he got. Germany was completely left in ruins. Germany was completely destroyed. He called Wilhelm a coward for surrendering in World War I, but at least Wilhelm had the guts to actually end the war when it did. He didn't want his country being destroyed in World War I, and look at what happened. World War II, Hitler refused to surrender. He would fight to the very last man, woman, and child, and look at what happened. Germany completely destroyed. Also, to any of my German viewers, if you guys could please translate this in the comments what these guys are saying, because there's no subtitles for this, I would really appreciate it if somebody can translate this.
Ist das, was ich den General erklären sollte?
Das sollte dem General eigentlich selbst klar sein. Es sei denn, ist genauso arrogant wie der Führer.
Sie werden die Tunnel überschwemmen.
Sie fürchten, die Russen könnten versuchen, auf diesem Weg den Königsplatz zu erreichen.
Gott steh uns bei.
Take him down quickly. Ready?
Cut them down! Kill them all! Room clear! Straight ahead! Enemy troops!
Look out!
Watch your head! The building is collapsing around us! Quickly, Fistra!
Killing me will not save you. My comrades show no mercy.
Your comrades are not.
If you don't act, he will execute him.
Get down! Germany will be on the move!
Grenades out of here.
The area is heavily defended. German, throw a Molotov down there. Burn them.
Yeah, okay. There's an MG42 on the first floor. You can cut around them up here.
Good work. Stay low. The smoke can steal your breath.
I can barely see! I can hardly breathe!
Complaining will not help. Just keep low. In Stalingrad, Dmitri and I go through many smoke-filled buildings. Do you hear him complaining? Up four! Enemy through! Grenade! Here they are!
Okay.
One more!
You can also hear the World at War like menu music actually playing here.
Sowjetische Gruppen!
Sure!
You're almost at the street!
Okay, here we go.
Ruins by the time this war is over! Reloading! Stay with the tank!
clear. Crap.
MG's up ahead! Dead floor! Keep moving!
Oh, here comes the tank, yep. Now this part is extremely gruesome.
Make sure they are all dead.
Kill them all! Wipe the scum from the streets!
Chernoff! What is going on?
These men are trying to surrender!
Look around you, Chernoff. Do you think these men will be denied their revenge? That comes only two ways. Fast or slow. Dimitri, it is your choice.
These guys are surrendering, and this is what happens if you don't do anything.
You should have shot them, Chernoff. It is only cruel to prolong an animal's suffering.
Quickly! Into the metro!
Yeah, that's the only thing that you can do in that, and that also affects the ending. If you actually let them burn, that actually affects the ending. The best thing to do is actually to the best thing to do in this situation is to actually shoot them, because they're not going to suffer as much as that is, because the other Red Army soldiers are not going to let them out. So
these men are trying to surrender.
This is exactly what I mean when I said that this game shows the horrors of the Eastern Front and what happened to prisoners oftentimes.
It is your choice.
Now, as messed up as this is, you have to shoot them. That's
You should learn from Dimitri. He understands the nature of mercy.
because they will be burned alive. This is this is really the least that you can do for them, because all the other Red Army soldiers are going to kill them. They're not going to let them leave. And I'm just checking their collars to see if they're SS. No, I don't see any SS collars. These guys appear to be just regular Wehrmacht, regular German army. And so they were probably possibly conscripts the last few weeks of the war. And so stuff like this very much did happen, where there was massive atrocities on the Eastern Front where prisoners were constantly executed. So the Germans would murder Soviet prisoners of war, and the Soviets would murder German prisoners of war. And the Soviets killing German prisoners of war actually increased Soviet casualties. And the reason for that is because when the Germans know that they're either going to get sent to a gulag or they're going to get, executed when they surrender, that they would rather fight to the death at that point than surrender. So literally, is by the Soviets killing German prisoners of war, is this actually caused more Germans to fight, and because of that, more Soviet soldiers ended up dying. So it's stupid. It's a war crime. It's also stupid to execute prisoners of war or war. It's stupid because it's going to get more of your soldiers killed, because if the enemy know that you're not going to take prisoners, they're going to keep fighting, and then more of your soldiers are going to die. If the enemy knows that you're going to be treated humanely and you're going to be treated fairly if you surrender, and you're probably going to survive, they're more likely to surrender. That's why there was mass surrenders to the Western Front, to the Americans. That's why so many Germans were surrendering to the Americans, because they knew that they had a much higher chance of surrendering to the Americans than much higher chance of surviving surrendering to the Americans than they did to the Soviets. So around this time in like 1945, when Germany was collapsing, what happened was there was thousands of Germans that were deserting And they were basically, what they were doing is they were going to the western side of Germany just so they could surrender to the Americans, because they knew the war was already lost, and they were just going to the American line, surrendering, hoping that they can, they can survive, at least surrendering to the Americans. So that basically shows you the Germans rather surrender to the Americans because they know the Americans are probably not going to murder them when they surrender. And as for, I know some people are going to say in the comments, but Professional, didn't U.S. soldiers execute German soldiers also? Yes, in instances it did happen also, but it wasn't widespread like with the Red Army. The Red Army, there was much more widespread killing of prisoners of war than there was with the U.S. Army. And the U.S. Army, the soldiers that the U.S. Army typically executed were SS. So they would check the collar, and if they saw the SS, they typically would execute them. So SS soldiers were typically executed, and the reason for that was because SS soldiers were the most fanatical to Hitler. They were the most loyal to Hitler. They were Hitler's, most elite personal soldiers were the SS. And so that's why the SS were oftentimes executed. One unit that actually got executed a lot by the Americans was German tank troops, because German tankers, they actually wore black. They wore all black, and a lot of American soldiers confused that for the SS. So when tankers ended up surrendering after the tank got knocked out, Americans would think they were SS and execute them. Now, there was SS tank units, but pretty much every single tanker had a black uniform, and because of that, Americans falsely thought that they were SS and would execute them. Now, the most well-known American, war crime was probably the Biscari Massacre, which that happened in Sicily in June or July 1943, and that was where 73 prisoners of war were executed. 71 were Italians, 2 were Germans, and that was, Patton was saying around that time, is like, show them no mercy. And then Patton was when Patton was saying, when you fight the enemy, show them no mercy, and that's what the Americans did when the Italians and the Germans surrendered. They killed them, and then Patton basically got some kind of trouble for that, and then Patton kept saying, "Oh, I didn't mean for them to say that," but Patton's words were poorly, it was poor choice of words, and it was a war crime. They shouldn't have done that. Is that the Italians had surrendered, and the Americans had shot them, but that was one war crime that the Americans had done. If you go to the Eastern Front, there was just so many times where the Soviets would execute German prisoners of war, and the horror about this is that the SS, they were horrible people. So it's understandable why they oftentimes got executed by the Americans. They were the most fanatical to the Nazi regime. But in the last few weeks of World War II, you had Wehrmacht that were just drafted in the last few weeks, and you had Volkssturm, like civilians. You even had Hitler Youth, and you can actually see Hitler Youth fighting in this, but they're not kids, they're still adults, but they're wearing Hitler Youth uniforms. So kids fighting, and then also like the civilian militias, which were Volkssturm. And these were, old people or young people, like kids, that were drafted into the German army within the last few weeks of the war. And they wore like red and black armbands that said Volkssturm, and the Soviets saw that and thought that they were Nazi party members and would constantly execute them. So these were like old people and young people that were drafted within the last few weeks of the war. And Reznov is saying, no mercy was shown for my comrades in Stalingrad. No mercy will be shown here. But the soldiers that you're fighting against, the majority of them here are just conscripts that were drafted within the last few weeks of the war. The soldiers that committed those horrible war crimes at Stalingrad, that was the 6th Army. And the 6th Army was destroyed at Stalingrad. They were either all killed or sent to gulags. And so they paid for it. Is that these were just conscripts that were just pretty much at the end of the war, that most of them, like the young people that were drafted, didn't participate in any kind of war crimes. They were just kids and teenagers that were drafted within the last few weeks of the war. And so there was a lot of them were either executed or they were sent to gulags. It was just horrible.
Cover both platforms!
Also, as for the subways, was there actually a fight in the subways, in the Berlin subways? Yes, there was a lot of fighting in the subways. Now, you guys will see the flood. And I know people are going to ask me, did the flood really happen, Professional? Yes, it did. The Berlin subways did get flooded. Now, basically, there's no evidence that the Nazis deliberately flooded the metros. There was like one Nazi general that I think like wrote a book that said that they flooded the metros. But there was like historians, I forget the guy's name, but there was historians that checked his records and they said it's probably not true. It was probably for his book. So, the Soviets had said that the Nazis had had flooded the metros, but we don't know if that's true. Now, where did the water come from? There's two theories. The first theory is that the Nazis had intentionally flooded the metro, and the common theory for that is that they had set charges on the Landwehr Canal, which was like a water that goes through Berlin, and right where the subway was, they blew up the wall and the water gushed in. And so that's one theory. But the most common belief on how the flood actually started wasn't that it was an intentional act of sabotage, but that during the fighting, when there was a lot of explosives like Panzerschrecks and and field guns going off in the subways, because the Soviets actually brought field guns down into the subway stations. They rolled them down there, and it was to get the Germans out of their positions because they were fortified in those subway platforms. And so when those field guns fired and they hit like walls and they blew up walls, there's a lot of like water pipes that go through the subways, and it's believed that a lot of those water pipes got hit and they started slowly flooding the subway. Now, it wasn't like a giant like tsunami of water that you see like in the game when you see like this giant tsunami of water coming at you. It wasn't really like that. It was more that the water had risen up. Water had risen up. I don't know how fast the water rose up. I don't know. But there was a lot of flooding. Now, for people asking how many people died in the flooding, between 200 to 1,000. That's what most people believe was between 200 to 1,000. But here's the thing. The majority of people that died in the flooding that drowned, they were actually not even German or Soviet soldiers. They were actually German civilians. And if this mission was more historically accurate, this mission would be even darker, because the subways are where German civilians had actually hid during the Battle of Berlin. So thousands of German civilians had hid in the subways just so they didn't get hit by artillery. And so when the fighting came down the subways, you would have civilians that would be running in the middle of it. Civilians, women, kids that would be running in the middle and getting gunned down in the middle of the fight. So if, like I said, that probably was not included in this because it would have been so controversial, civilians getting gunned down in the middle of this. But that's pretty much what had happened. So the majority of the victims that died in the subway flooding were civilians.
Give your eyes a moment to adjust
on the left platform. Open fire!
What? Okay. How am I getting hit here still? Oh, come on. I don't know where I just got hit from there. I was really completely behind cover.
Split up! Cover both platforms!
Enemy troops!
Here they are!
Damn. Yeah, so I forgot how hard the subway part of this mission is.
Stay where you are. Give your eyes a moment to adjust to the darkness.
MC-42 on the left platform!
Open fire!
Ready your man!
Hilfe wurde getroffen! Sowjetische Truppen!
There we go! Fight forward!
Gewehr 43,
They may be coding in the dark!
this was really a copy up of the Soviet SVT-40. The Germans had taken the SVT-40 and shipped it back to Germany and had used it to make their own semi-auto, which was the Gewehr 43.
I see them!
Good shot!
Whoa, okay.
Stay where you are. I see them! I can barely see! The place is collapsing! Move!
We are going to be clear the right platform!
Buried alive! Move! I see them! Faster! You deserve no better! We need to find a way out! We will! There will be an exit at the end of the platform! We will regroup there!
Oh yeah, this right here. You see these guys? I am pretty certain this is Hitler Youth. I think this is Hitler Youth, which that's part of the historical accuracy mod. And you even see they have the Hitler Youth knife. That's the knife that the Hitler Youth would carry around. And Hitler Youth, these were basically kids that were indoctrinated into the Nazi ideology, and they were brought up into the German military. And so a lot of Hitler Youth did fight in the Battle of Berlin. A lot of times these were kids, young teenagers. In Downfall in the movie, you can actually see a small child that actually fought in that.
What do we do now?
There! On the platform! I understand!
Enemy troops!
Crap, okay. Also, there was one other thing that I remembered, guys, that I wanted to bring up. One final thing I forgot to bring up. I should have brought this up earlier. But basically, a lot of people would say about when American war crimes during World War II are brought up, some people bring up the Dachau camp guard executions. The Americans had liberated the camp, and when they liberated the camp, they saw so many dead bodies, trains full of just dead bodies, kids that were completely starved to death. And what happened was the SS guards that were in the camp opened fire on the Americans, and then they later surrendered. And these SS guards had killed so many people in that camp, so many people that they murdered. And what happened was they forced the prisoners on the death march before the camp was liberated. When the Americans saw all of that, what they did was they took the SS guards in that camp and they lined up against the wall and they shot them. And, people would, there's a lot of people that say, Americans executed these surrendering German soldiers, but what they don't know is that these were Nazi concentration camp guards that had, committed horrific crimes and mass murders. And what happened was a lot of the concentration camp prisoners, what they did was they actually beat the remaining guards to death. And so these prisoners had suffered through so much. Imagine watching your loved ones being murdered before you. These horrible, sadistic people, and kids, women killed. you know, these horrible guards, doing slave labor on them, starving them to death. And so the prisoners had a right to be pissed off at these guys. These guys were horrible people, and they had done these horrible things to these prisoners, such horrific things, and they surrendered, and they expected to be treated with mercy. That's what they did. They surrendered to the Americans, and they thought that the Americans were just going to treat them with mercy. And the Americans, for the most part, treated most German soldiers with mercy when they surrendered. But this was a different instance. These were, you know, mass murderers that had killed thousands of people. And what ended up happening was the U.S. commanded an investigation, and the U.S. command could not find any witnesses. There was no witnesses. There was no soldiers that were witnesses to exactly what had happened. And also, the concentration camp prisoners would not testify. They would not say who, you know, executed the Nazi guards. And the thing is, though, is everybody knew who did it. Everybody knew which soldiers executed the Nazi guards. Everyone knew who did it. It was obvious. The prisoners knew. The other soldiers, the command knew. The reason that they said that the reason they dropped the investigation was because nobody wants to prosecute somebody for nobody wants to prosecute somebody who killed a mass murderer. That's why. You know, imagine that, prosecuting somebody who executed a mass murderer. So, like, nobody wants to be that person who prosecutes somebody who killed a mass murderer. And so, like, people sometimes, I see comments on, like, you know, World War II videos where they talk about, like, you know, Allied war crimes, and people will say, oh, you know, the Dachau, you know, camp guards surrendered and the Americans executed them. Well, these guys had, like, you know, murdered thousands of prisoners. These were not just some innocent, you know, conscripts that were conscripted into the German army like the last few weeks of war. These were, you know, Nazi SS officials that were, you know, committing mass murder. Crap. Yep. Here we go, this part now with the...
It's stuck! More German! Hold them back! What is that noise?
So you see the water, it was more like this. The water would just rise over time. It wasn't like this giant tsunami of water that, like, you see.
Keep them off me! Almost got it! Hurry, Sergeant! Dmitri! Look out! Got it!
Okay, so here we got Black Cats. Now, I know this mission is probably the one people have been looking forward to the most, which is the most popular, the best American mission in the game. Take out Japanese merchant ships with the crew of a PBY Catalina and defend your allied fleet against a massive kamikaze attack. Let's do it.
The Battle of Peleliu finally came to an end in November 1944. 3 bitter months after it was supposed to. When we shipped out for Okinawa, the airfield became a vital asset in the campaign. Among those stationed there are the crews of the U.S. Navy Black Cats. Men who would risk everything before they would leave any of us in enemy waters.
Hope that you guys like the cosplay for this also.
Yeah, I see him. Landry, open up comms! Major Garden, vessels are now in visual range. Unmarked Japanese merchant fleet. Designation unknown.
They're probably resupplying the enemy on Okinawa.
Legitimate targets?
Affirmative, they're part of the enemy war machine. Permission to engage, over and out.
Roger that. Laughlin, Locke, get to your station. Stop picking targets.
Okay, so, I'm basically cosplaying as, like, the pilot. Okay, so these guys are the Black Cats, and the Black Cats, they are also known as Patrol Squadron 33. This was a squadron that was part of the United States Navy, and these guys flew these planes called PBY Catalinas, which were amphibious planes. I will be honest with you guys, I don't know that much about aircraft. I know much more about World War II guns than I know about planes, but this was basically a squad that operated a lot in the Pacific, and so these planes could land in the water, so they had, you know, they pretty much could land anywhere in the ocean that they wanted to. And they could also pick up, you know, crewmen from ships that were that were stranded, which you'll actually see a little bit later. Now, what they are going to be doing right here is they are going to be attacking a Japanese merchant fleet. Now, the question is this allowed? Yes, this is very much a legitimate target, because if it's a fleet that is basically supplying the enemy with ammunition and supplies, then it is pretty much a valid target at that point. The only types of ships that are not allowed to be hit during wartime are civilian ships and also medical ships. So if it's like a military ship and it's a medical ship that has like the big red cross, as long as they are not, you know, smuggling weapons on it, as long as, you know, it's just strictly for like, you know, medical reasons, then medical ships are not to be targets. So medical and civilian ships, but like merchant ships that are carrying like arms for the enemy are very much legitimate targets.
Open fire! Keep it up! Whoa! You see that shit blow? Get on the rear gun! Take an MG fire on our 6!
There's also fuel tanks in the ships that you can blow up, PT boats.
We're going in for another run.
Echo that.
Nice shoot! Anyone see flag guns on that first pass? Taking evasive action! Everyone hold on! We got smoke coming from our number 2 engine! Damn, that was close! Lock! Shit! Tell me we've not lost our gunner! He's okay! What the fuck are merchant ships doing with that much firepower? That must be some pretty important cargo they're carrying. We need to get below the flag! I can't line up a decent shot! I hear ya! We got MG fire all around! Take out those fucking PT boats! They're our biggest threat right now!
This gets too risky. Should we abort?
Negative! We can do this! PT boat out of commission!
Got him.
Taking her down low! Locke, Laughlin, keep on them! Shoot out those damn spotlights! That's a hit! Left wing smoky! Japanese PT boats! 9 o'clock! Get on the left turn! You put a lot of holes in that PT boat!
I remember you got a trophy for shooting out all the searchlights. The American invasion of Okinawa is happening, and these ships are basically resupplying Okinawa.
Fire in the engine! Pick your targets, Locke! I think we disabled them, but they're still afloat.
This is it. Now it's time to bring down the fleet.
I'll take us as close as we can, but we need to wrap this up. This is our last pass.
Love the soundtrack in this mission.
yeah. They're going down.
Good work, Locke. You saved a lot of lives on Okinawa. We're done here. Get some altitude. Heading back to base.
Echo that. We got pretty roughed up on that last run, Booth.
Confirmed, Hammerhead. You got smoke coming from your number 2 engine.
Cages ain't hitting red. We should be able to hold her. As long as we don't run into any more trouble with the enemy.
Oh, hell. Captain, distress call coming in. The fleet's been hit en route to Okinawa. Air support's too far out. At least one infantry transport ship has already gone down.
Okay. Locke, seal the ventral hatch. We'll be putting down on the ocean. Let's go get our men.
Shit! You hear that?
Zeros! Right below us! Shit! Take down as many of those damn planes!
Yeah, that many Zeros. Zeros are basically the main attack, the main fighter plane of Imperial Japan.
That's the way!
The one thing I do know about Zeros, the reason that they were so agile is because they almost had no armor. That's the reason they were so agile. That many Zeros, they would have been screwed.
10 o'clock! High! 12 o'clock! You nailed that plane! 6 o'clock! The number 2 engine is blowing fire! Shut it down! Shut it down!
I'm trying. The controls are shot to hell.
Hold it together,
We are
Harrington!
going down.
Hold
I
it
say again, we
together!
are going.
Harrington! Damn it! We lost Hammerhead! We're on our own! Okay, people. The fleet still needs our help. Anyone want to back out? Didn't think so. Going into a hot zone. I want everyone sharp and ready for anything. Bastards wiped out most of our ships.
Holy shit! You think anyone's gonna be alive down there?
Well, I see multiple casualties in the water.
Shit! Poor bastards.
We better not be the only ones responding to the distress call. We ain't got room for all of them.
Do what we can. Taking us down.
We got fire days are over! Kamikazes! 2 o'clock! High!
My god.
Sink those damn PT boats before they rip our men to shreds.
Now you see what the Japanese PT boats are doing is they're shooting at stranded American sailors. You can't do that, that's a war crime. You don't have to rescue enemy sailors that are trapped in the water after the ship has been sunk, but to shoot enemy sailors that are not a threat to you and are just trapped in the water, this is very much a war crime, but the Japanese, they don't care. Also, about those PT boats, those boats might seem, small, but those boats are massive threats. Those boats carry 2 torpedoes each, and they can sink destroyers. This is exactly what I mean when I say that Imperial Japan is the toughest enemy the US has ever fought. That you're fighting an enemy that is not scared of death, thinks that surrender is worse than death, and is willing to fly into enemy ships and kill themselves.
They're all around! Keep them off what's left of the fleet! Fuck! You need to take out some of those Zeros before I can take us up! Stay on that trigger! It's all on you!
For people that want to know how many kamikaze attacks happened, over 2,000 during the war. The largest ship that was sunk by a kamikaze attack was the USS St. Lo, which was an aircraft carrier. My god, more kamikaze attacks.
Fuck yeah! Ammo's running low! We're at 50 cows, almost down! That ain't good! Zero down! 1 o'clock! Damn it, I'm out! Right turn's out of ammo! Left 50's almost out! You clipped that bastard's wing!
During the Battle of Okinawa, there was 1,900 kamikaze attacks. For people that want to know how many ships did the kamikaze attack sink, over 37.
Landry, prep for takeoff. Laughlin, patches up as best you can. Okay, taking her up. How'd we do?
We pulled 5 men on board. Good job, Locke.
Okay, taking us home.
Hallelujah!
Also, if you want to know why was it 37 American ships were sunk if it was over 2,000 kamikaze attacks, 1,900 kamikaze attacks happened alone during the Battle of Okinawa. The Japanese were getting extremely desperate at that point. Now, why were 37 ships sunk when there was over 2,000 kamikaze attacks? A lot of planes would either get, they would fly so close to the ships, they would get shot down, or they would just damage the ships. They wouldn't sink them, they would just heavily damage them. But that's basically why I've always said that Imperial Japan is the toughest enemy the US has ever fought. And, you know, when I see these, like, comments of people saying, oh, you know, the US had it easy in World War II and the Soviet Union had it the hardest, the US by no means had it easy in World War II. And if you were an American soldier, chances are you probably would prefer to fight in the Western Front in World War II than to fight in the Pacific, because this is a perfect example of just the horror of the Pacific. It's just like, imagine how horrible that is, that, you know, your ship gets sunk, you're stranded out at sea, you're at the mercy of Japanese planes, and also ships that are shooting at you when you're in the water. Like I said, that's a war crime, is you cannot shoot at enemy sailors that are trapped in the water. As long as they're not a threat, as long as they're not shooting at you, you cannot target enemy sailors. You don't have to save them, but targeting them, shooting enemy sailors, and the Japanese planes, they would just come in, and they would just do dive bomb attacks, and the sailors are just floating in the water, trapped in the water, on boats, on lifeboats. And what those PT boats are doing is horrible. And also, I wanted to mention this, guys, about the USS St. Lo, one of the largest ships sunk by a kamikaze attack. There was over 800 people on that ship. Out of the 800 people, over 113 died on the ship, and then 30 later died of their wounds. And one fact that I learned, one disturbing thing, the pilot that actually crashed into the ship, Yukio Seki, the guy was 23 years old. And the average age of a kamikaze pilot was 21 years old. That is how young these guys are. And when I was a kid, and I was learning about kamikaze pilots, I always thought that these guys were, like, you know, in their 40s or, you know, these late 30s that were, you know, so devoted to the Emperor. But then I found out that the average age of a kamikaze pilot is 21 years old. These were young adults. Some of them were even kids, younger than 18 years old. And the Japanese were using their better pilots, their more experienced pilots for combat, flight combat. But these guys, they were training these kids to basically suicide bomb, to die. Just like that. And so these guys were throwing their lives away for an emperor and a shogun that didn't even care about them at all. They had their entire lives ahead of them, and to be brainwashed so badly that you're gonna fly into ships and do something like this. And this picture right here, this picture is one of the most disturbing pictures that I've ever seen. Now, this picture might seem normal. You just see a bunch of Japanese pilots happy, and you see the guy in the middle just holding a puppy. You think, oh, you know, what's so bad about this picture? But it's this backstory about this photo that's so disturbing. The guy holding the puppy right there, his name is Yukio Araki, and he is the youngest kamikaze pilot that died in World War II. How old was Yukio Araki when he died? 17 years old. He barely turned 17. He was only 2 months into his 17th year. This was not even an adult. This guy was a kid. To be brainwashed that badly, to do something like this, flying into a ship, killing yourself like this, when your whole life is ahead of you. He died only 1 day after that picture was taken of him holding that puppy. During the Battle of Okinawa, he flew into the US's Brain, and he killed 66 people. There was about 2 planes that attacked the USS Brain, and he's blamed for one of the guys who caused the deaths on the ship. So, brainwashed so badly, 17-year-old was brainwashed so badly, flew into a ship, killed himself, killed himself for an emperor and a shogun that didn't even care about him, didn't value his life, and killed, over 60 American sailors at that same time. And he left a letter for his parents. He said, "Please find pleasure in your desire for my loyalty to the emperor and devotion to parents. I have no regrets. I just go forward on my path." And so that's what's so disturbing, is the average age of these kamikaze pilots. Some of these guys were kids, and they were so brainwashed into that ideology that they believed that the emperor was a god, and they were willing to throw their lives away for him like this, when they literally had their whole lives ahead of them. Some of these guys weren't even adults. Like I said, they were just kids. And that just was so disturbing when you find out the true age of these kamikaze pilots. But I hope that you guys enjoyed this part. I'll have the next part for you guys as soon as I can. The next part will be the American ending, the Battle of Okinawa. So thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful day, guys.